Hello and welcome to Thinking About Selling Your Business. Did you know that over 70% of businesses are owned by baby boomers who are nearing retirement? And if you are one of them, you probably have one of a lot of questions. One that is the biggest one that we get is my business saleable? And often it turns out that there's quite a few things that you need to put in place. So we are here. I am Sigrid from Stickybeak Marketing with my partner in Canada, Sharon MacLean from WorldGate Media. And we are interviewing experts. On our panel today, we have Sarah Stein in Australia. And let me tell you a little bit about Sarah. Sarah has built a big, brilliant business, and she has a lot of knowledge and expertise that we are tapping into today to give you some answers. Sarah started from the background of wanting to have a business that fits her lifestyle, looking after children like many of us women want to do. She made sure that she had time and location available, so she would always be available for family as well. But she managed to create a 14 franchise empire across Australia with her business. And we will hear the details soon about that. Sarah is a bookkeeper. Now, looking at systems and processes is a big part of a bookkeeper. And that is what we want to know about today, how systems can really make a difference when you set them up properly in your business when you're ready to sell. Now, I'm handing it over to Sharon to ask some deep and meaningful questions, and then we're going to have a really great conversation with Sarah to tap into that vast knowledge of her building her business and then changing a little bit in the direction as well to make it work life business balance. Sharon.
Thank you, Sigrid, and welcome Sarah Stein to our show on selling your business. We really enjoy and appreciate that you have decided to talk from your point of view and from your area of expertise around systems for businesses, for small businesses. And you have, Sarah, such a compelling story, such a compelling personal story about how and why you started up your business. And I want to get to that a little bit later. We want to hear why and how it was that you started up into an at-home business is what had happened, and grew that to franchises. But as I went through your reading materials and through your website, what struck me the most, Sarah, was truly what a microcosm of perfection really you have in terms of systems, really that ranges and serves not only small business, but large business as well. You've got the systems, the internal practices in your business. You have got the marketing systems nailed down beautifully from what I could see. You had a system of onboarding emails that really impressed me for a new client. And the other thing that impressed me was how you had identified your personas, what we would call personas, for your prospects for business. So that would be a client in need of financial management, number one, but number two, the accountant that you also had to serve, which are two different needs as far as I could tell. Can you talk to us about that and how you identified and came to identify those two different tracks for yourself?
So for the clients and the accountants?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So firstly, thank you for having me. It's lovely to be in such esteemed company, and I'm very happy to be here to speak to you about systems and how important they are in business. So I deal with small, micro-sized businesses, clients who might have up to about 30 employees, and I'm really passionate about helping business owners move their business to the next level or to whatever direction they want it to go in. You don't need to build an empire because everybody's business journey is different. And the one thing I've found is people are really passionate about their businesses, and they can get really bogged down in the day-to-day running. So when that happens, they get really overwhelmed and they start to wonder why they went into business in the first place. And it's really hard to get out of that overwhelmed position. So that's where I believe systems are the most important part of running your business, and a really good asset within your business as well. Like when you come to sell or pass it down, or even bringing staff on board, it's a really important asset to have in your business. So my business is, I guess I have two types of clients. So the first is obviously the small businesses that I service with my bookkeeping. And then the other side is the accountants, as you mentioned. So we like to develop a three-way relationship between us, the accountant, and the client, because we are all important parts within the business and do all just slightly separate roles, but we're all focused together to build the business and send it in the direction that the business owner is trying to do.
Absolutely. So you clarified your client essentially before you started your business, or did that reveal itself as you went along?
Yeah, no, I was one of those ones that decided that any client would do. And it's really hard when you start business, it's really hard to say no, because you're just trying to build it. And I didn't start with a game plan. I started my business as a knee-jerk reaction to a personal tragedy. I didn't have any money behind me. The first day I didn't really even know what I was going to do. I didn't ever have a clear direction. So I spent quite a long time just letting the business guide me rather than me guiding the business. And it's only been recently that I have started to develop more of a client persona, as you mentioned. So I'm very happy that you said that, because most people don't relate to that. Yeah, and but it's important to know who your target market is and who you resonate with working with. I do turn clients away now, or prospects away now, because I'm very clear on the type of business that I want to work with and the type of systems that I want to put in place for them. And if they're not really open to that, then we're probably not going to be the best fit.
Mm-hmm. And that's a very, sorry Sharon, that's a hard decision to make for any business at any stage, I think, to actually be able to say no and be comfortable thinking, oh, there's going to be the one that I do want coming along.
Yeah. Well, when I first decided, okay, I'm not going to work with these type of clients, I was very clear in my mind. And then I got the next phone call that was that type of client. And in my head, I was saying, no, I can't help them. And out of my mouth came, yes, sure, let's sign you up. So it is a bit of a learning curve, and you have to train yourself first. So, you know, it doesn't happen immediately. And unfortunately, some businesses just don't have the financial capability to turn work away. But as you grow your business, you can build that in. And if you say no today, someone else is going to come along tomorrow. And they're going to be the clients that you are wanting to work with. And if you fill your book up, if you like, with clients that you don't really like working with, then you might as well have a job.
That's a beautiful way to approach. I'm very interested in the type of client and the characteristics of that client that you had identified. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so it was quite difficult for me to niche, if you like, to use that term. And to me, niching meant picking an industry. But it's not actually just picking an industry. It could be about picking or defining a certain type of client who has certain characteristics or location or business size, or, you know, all sorts of different things. So I have niched my business into 3 separate industries. It worked out that way. So I really love working with clients who are in hospitality, so restaurants and cafes, health and fitness, so that's gym owners, podiatrists, physiotherapists, and hair and beauty, so hairdressers and salon owners. And they are quite different industries, but when you bring it back to the type of people they are, they're really passionate about their business. They usually have up to about 15 staff. Often the business owner is working in the business and wants to grow it and is very open to putting systems in place and improving their business, but they're time poor. So it's hard for them to do that. So to have us and we come in and help them with that, it's awesome to see the transformations that we can help people implement into their business.
And I want to congratulate you on identifying those 3 sectors, because you've positioned them on the homepage of your website.
Yeah.
So we know very clearly right off the bat who it is that you really like working with. And again, it's what you have done is what we're asking so many of our clients to do, which is to say in their website, you know, it's really not about you, client. It's really about the customers that you want to attract. And so right off the bat, you have done that as a first entry point to your business on your website.
And some people think, oh, I can't niche it down. I need everybody to be available to me because then I'll get more business. Yeah. But if you niche it down, apparently you will get more business because people know exactly what you do. That's so right. Those people will come to you. So if you specialize in something, you will actually get more. It seems like a bit of a backward concept in saying that, you know, if I'm a generalist, everyone will come, but maybe no one will come because they don't really know what you do. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're a specialist, people know exactly what you do and you have, you know, you should be great in that area. And then people will know, okay, this is the person that I go to because they are brilliant at that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I've heard a recent comment, or I've come across a recent comment today within the internet enabled world that, you know, we don't really, all of us need all that much information today. I mean, with the overwhelming delivery of information, people want direction more so than they actually want information. So what you're saying to them is I can help you direct you in your niche, and that you've identified those 3 sectors that appeal to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because people know that they need help in their business because they're feeling overwhelmed, but they don't necessarily know exactly what that means. If I go onto a website and I want to buy something specific and I have 17 options, I'm going to get overwhelmed and go somewhere else. But if I have 3 options or someone telling me this is the thing that you need to buy, I'll be like, okay, that's what I need. So sometimes you don't actually know, you need something, but you don't know exactly what. It's like if you go to the doctor, you know that you've got a pain, but you don't know what's causing it. And so you go to the doctor to diagnose that and give you their recommendations on what to do moving forward. Our business is exactly the same. So we diagnose the problems and put recommendations in place to solve them.
And bringing that, just jumping in here, bringing that back to when you're ready to sell your business, you know, when you have niched yourself or when you have made it very clear that you are specific in certain areas with your business, 2 things happen. Number 1, the business itself is positioning themselves as the expert business in that particular area. That is already giving it an asset, an intangible asset, because it's a positioning of being the expert in a particular area. And number 2, when the business owner is ready to look at selling, it is an asset in terms of looking at a particular buyer, which is something that we have in our program, that we are helping the business owner to actually look themselves at who the ideal buyer is. Just like we are looking at who's my ideal client for my business, who do I want to work with, who is the ideal buyer? And there's a lot around that that we teach a business owner to really stage their business and bring it into the fitness to be ready to be sold. So excellent. I like that, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yes, and the other thing is that that intrigued me, of course, is that you've been in business since 2002. Yeah. That's 16 years, I believe. Yeah, Madam Accountant. So that's really a generation that you have been in business now, and you have seen and you have moved from becoming a startup to through climbing a mountain to build 14 franchises throughout Australia, which to me, which was so impressive for what apparently what came across to me as a small business, but really no, it was a pretty good sized business. And then of course you now have made a different change, or you've made another change to sell those franchises or get away from the franchise concept. Can you tell us about that journey and why? And the vision, I think that that started with the growth and then the decision to downsize.
So just from the franchise point? Or from starting
yes, please,
the business completely? Okay, so the franchise point, I was at a stage in my business, I was 7 years into my business, and during that time I had systematized it really well. Not because I had set out necessarily to do that, but it's just part of my personality, and that's something that I would have done. So it was very well systematized. I had a few staff that were working for me, and I was working interstate and intrastate quite a lot, and I got pregnant. So my baby was due right at the end of financial year period. And at this point I had 2 staff working for me. And so I was thinking, okay, well, how am I going to service my clients if I can't travel? So I thought, well, I'll need to work in the office, and my staff will need to go out on site. So the day that I sat down to tell my employee that this is the new plan, she sat down and told me that she was pregnant too, was having a baby at the same time, and was leaving right at the end of the financial year. So I'm like, oh, holy, what am I going to do now? So I started thinking, all right, well, I need to engage some subcontractors. So instead of taking staff on at that time, I'll engage some subcontractors who can help me out during that busy time, and, it'll all be fine. So I interviewed a few subcontractors, and they were running terrible businesses. They were people who had jobs in an ABN. So an ABN, Sharon, is like a registration number that you have to have in Australia to be able to run a business. So they really weren't business people, and they had no processes. I was basically taking them on as an employee unofficially. And I was really astounded that there were these people out there who were selling themselves as bookkeeping businesses, but they weren't. And I thought about this, and I thought, I need to develop a franchise or develop some sort of system where I can help mums get back into the workforce, where they can work their business around their family like I want to do, and I can train them the way I want them to work, which gives them a really good foundation, because they had pretty bad foundations in like just how to do the work as well. Train them how I want to do it, and then we'll have this group of support. So if we're all one-man bands and one of us wants to go on holiday, or we have a baby, or you're sick, or you just need some help, we can call on each other within the franchise group. And because we all do it the same way, we could all just step in and help each other out, but not have that fear of an outsider coming into your business and stealing your clients, which is also another issue when you potentially take on subcontractors. Yeah. So that was the reasoning behind it. I was just really passionate about helping mums get back into the workforce, but it wasn't restricted to mums, and build a really great business that they could be proud of and work around their family.
I think that...
So then you grew. Yeah. Sorry, Sigrid?
No, I was just going to say, I think that's a really important point, Sarah, that I see from a marketing perspective. And of course, that does translate also into selling the business, that the business owner, depending on the industry they're in. So bookkeeping is certainly one of them, where if you employ somebody, where you have that opportunity that they might actually walk away with some of the clients that you introduce them to. Hairdressers have that issue as well, and and so that's great what you created there. I think that's not just from a business perspective, but from a personal people perspective, an excellent way of setting up the business. So really well done. So Sharon, go on.
What happened as you peaked and made then another decision to reverse that role?
Okay, so fundamentally I'm a bookkeeper, and I was just passionate about helping businesses, or, you know, these people get into their own business. So I didn't. So when the franchisees came on board, they paid what essentially was a training fee. So me to train them to use the systems and how best to grow their business. So I didn't, there wasn't a huge investment for people coming on board, which on one hand is great because it's affordable for them to come in. On the other hand, it's not so great because they don't then see the value. And then the ongoing fee, we structured it in a way that it was a percentage of their income, but the lower, the less that they earned, the higher the fees was for them. And as their business grew and their fees increased, then my percentage of fees to them reduced because they were growing their business and didn't need as much support. So I really tried to look at the franchise from my perspective. If I were in their shoes, what would I want and how would I want it to be? Would I want to be paying high franchise fees when my business was doing really well because I had put a lot of work into it? So it's sort of like, I sort of felt like I was penalising them for running great businesses. So instead I flipped it around and was incentivizing them to run great businesses. So I had the franchise for about 5 years and I disbanded it after that point because when it got to about 10, it really turned into a franchise business rather than a bookkeeping business with a few franchisees on the side. And I really wanted us to be more of a sort of a community together. But when it got to be a few more than that, their expectations were way more than what I was able to give them. So, and I think that comes back to I didn't value it so that they didn't value it. And they just put way too much too many expectations on me to be able to grow their business. So I was giving them a system to be able to do that. But ultimately, we run a personal type of business where clients develop a relationship with you, the person. So although those systems are really important, they still needed to go out and build their business. And they, you know, you can't just open the doors and expect people to come. Businesses just don't work that way, no matter what type of business it is. I mean, even if you buy a big franchise that costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars, if you do nothing, then nothing will happen.
That's right. Let me draw a parallel back to the selling your business from that, Sarah. That's a really important point. It is always, when you're in business, it is always you who wants to run it and take control of it. And I think that, you know, when you get looking at the marketing component first, being in marketing myself, when a business owner hands over their marketing completely without understanding it themselves, they lose that control and they lose the direction of it. And in the same way, when they are wanting to sell their business, taking that control in setting up a business, setting up ways that really puts value there and shows up the intangible components of the business is so important for the business owner to do themselves. And at the same time also to hand it over to a broker to sell is one part, but they really want to take on a control of looking at the buyer persona themselves, because that puts the value back there into them finding not only the right person, but also finding the value, connecting the right person to the value of that business. Great. I love what you did. That's a very unique, actually. I had not heard that about franchising before, that they look at it from that reversed angle about the fees and getting the engagement of the franchisee.
Yeah, well, I hadn't ever seen that model either, and I did some research and I couldn't find any other models like that. But I just put myself back into the franchisee's shoes and thought, what would I want as a franchise? So that's how it came about, and it worked really well conceptually, but and franchising just isn't for me. If I were to have stopped my bookkeeping business and just focused on the franchise, I probably could have built it, but it really wasn't where my passion was, because I'm fundamentally still very passionate about bookkeeping, and that's what I love to do. And, you know, it just seemed to be a good idea at the time, and I ran with it, and it worked for a while. And, you know, I didn't, you know, when we decided to wind it up, it was a group discussion with all of the franchisees that we had, and we had a conversation. I asked what they wanted, they asked what I wanted, and we came up with a plan together, and we all decided just to walk away. They had about 6 months to, like, they could take all of their clients that they had gotten, they could take all of the learnings that they had. You know, it's, you know, hard to take that system off them because it's stuff that they'd learned, so they could take all of that. And I was still really passionate about them going forward and still continuing to grow their business, and it worked really nicely. And I didn't have that pressure of, you know, having to help them build their business, and they were sort of, you know, they'd taken a few steps forward and they could build it from there. So that's how it came about.
You covered so nicely what it is that has turned up in all of our interviews here on video with our guests. And of course, Sigrid and I have talked about this at length, and we have built this into our 7-step coaching program. And maybe I can turn eventually in a minute to Sigrid to talk about those 7 steps that we have designed for people considering selling their business. But what you just talked about here is intrinsic to the whole program, which is self-reflection. And it is what it is that you want for the balance in your life. Essentially, you disbanded your franchise program because you really asked yourself what it is that you wanted in your own life and how you wanted to live your life. And this was not for you, but you asked yourself the hard questions. And so often we have to ask that person who is selling their business and encourage them to go through our program to help them walk through their self-reflection. Because, as you said, so many people are wrapped up in the day-to-day aspects of running here and there to catch up with their own business, but they don't really have the time to sit back and ask themselves those hard questions. What is it that I'm going to expect after I sell the business? What kind of life do I want to have after I sell that business? How is my family affected? And particularly because we're spending so much time with boomers, do they consider this as their retirement exit strategy? And what will they do in their retirement now that we're all living to 100 years, according to the financial planners? And or do we want to finance a new dream with the sale of that business?
And I think it's important to remember that
so much of that.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think it's important to remember that there's no right or wrong way. It doesn't matter. Like, you just have to decide what's best for you. There's lots of ways to do it. But, you know, you need to, yes, like you said, have that reflection time. Think about what you want, how you want it to happen. And there's no right or wrong. It's just what's right for you. And what might be right for you now might be different in 5 years' time, or have been different 5 years ago if you were thinking about doing it then. So, yeah, I don't think you can't get stuck on, is this the right way to do it? Am I supposed to be doing it this way? All of the other people in my industry do it this way. It doesn't matter. It's just what's right for you.
And I mean, you have had, again, such a compelling story for the reasons why you started up your business. Maybe you could take a few minutes and tell us how it was and why it was that you started.
Yeah, so I was working for an international relocations company. I had met my husband there. I loved my job, and our plan was, after we got married, we would have babies. I would go back to work and Jason would be the house husband at home. And he had his golf buggy all worked out, and it was where the baby was going to go, and he was going to be super organized and on the golf course with this baby by 9:30 every morning. And so not long after we got married, I got pregnant and I had a miscarriage. And it was devastating, but it didn't change our plans. And then about 3 months after that, my sister-in-law lost a baby to cot death, and it totally turned my world upside down. And there were people at that baby's funeral whose first encounter with her was the funeral. And it got me thinking, I don't want to be the mum who kisses her children good morning and good night and the rest of the time I'm at work. So I went to my boss and said, let's put things in place so that by the time that, I'll get pregnant again, and by the time the baby comes, I can work from home. And he said, no, it won't work. And I said, well, what do you mean it won't work? Of course it will work. We'll just make it work. And it was, 16 years ago, and technology was different back then, but I know that it would have worked. And he said, no, it's definitely won't work. So I went home that night and I was still shell-shocked and by, this baby's death, and I was completely tunnel visioned that I needed to be at home. So I told my husband, I'm resigning tomorrow. And I must have had that look on my face, and he didn't, argue. And the next day I resigned, and I was 6 months short of long service leave. So in hindsight, I should have stayed a little bit longer, but I just really felt that I needed to be out of there and work from home. So I resigned, worked out my notice period, and then I very vividly remember sitting at my computer the first day of my job, my, business, thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do now. What am I going to do now? Because I had no idea about what I was going to do, didn't have any direction, didn't have any money behind me, nothing. So I sort of just fell into bookkeeping because that's what I was good at doing. That's what I was qualified as. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, I just need to make this work now. So I had to make it work because I just gotten rid of half of our family income. So I got a part-time job as a court reporter to supplement that for a couple of days a week so that I could work on my business 3 days a week. And within 8 months, I resigned from that job. I had about 50 clients, and then a couple of months later, I hired my first employee. So I built a business out of necessity because I didn't want to go back and get another job. And I systematized it, not because I thought that, I needed to build systems, but because that was just part of, that's ingrained in my personality. And it took us 7 years of fertility treatments and all sorts of stuff to finally, get that baby. But by the time he came, people would say to me, oh, what are you going to do when the baby comes? You're so busy and you're out, you're traveling and stuff. And I said, well, you know what? The baby's not due on payday. So I've slotted him into my diary and it's just going to be fine. And luckily for me, it just about was that way. It wasn't that like that for baby two, but because I had developed this highly systematized business, he just about, just slotted in. Things just happened. I didn't have, my phone doesn't ring off the hook with clients asking me where their paperwork is up to or, what's going on, because I'm in front of them first. So I thought about all of the areas where all of the things that are manual or things that, bottlenecks, I suppose, and thought, well, what can I do to remove that? So traveling on site, we put in remote access. Removing those phone calls of people chasing me and they're not sure, we contacted them and let them know the process beforehand. So, and that's still evolving. How my business looks today is very different to how it looked 5 years ago and 5 years before that. And in 5 years' time, it'll look different again.
My goodness, I want to return to some of those systems. Now, you've had more health challenges with your husband.
Yes. So when I had Zach, so he's my first baby, I that was at the point that I was starting to develop my franchise. And then Jaden came along 18 months later. So I think I had 4 franchisees by that point. So when I was pregnant with Jaden, my husband broke his arm, and it was a really bad break, and he couldn't work, and, he was pretty hopeless. But it was very difficult for him. And he was still off work when Jaden came along. And when Jaden was 2 months old, I was going out on a Sunday morning to buy him a christening outfit for 2 weeks later. And Jason and my mum were at home. Jason's my husband. And I said, look, I'm going to be gone for about an hour. You're just going to have to, between the two of you, you'll be able to deal with this baby and this toddler. And so I got the kids sorted out, and then I went to say goodbye to Jason, and he was lying on the bed and he was clutching his arm, clutching his chest, shaking, sweating, grey. And I looked at him and I said, what's wrong? And he said, oh, I don't feel well. And I said, you're having a heart attack, Jace. And he's like, no, I can't be having a heart attack. And I said, you are having a heart attack. So I rang the ambulance and they came. Long story short, we get to the hospital, and through the chatter in the hospital emergency room, I learned that when you have a heart attack, you get this protein in your blood called troponin, but it can take up to 12 hours to show up. So they do 3 blood tests over 12 hours. And at the second blood test, it was still all fine. And they said, oh, you know, because Jason was 35 years old, he was super fit, had a really, you know, he had been an elite sportsman, you know, not heart attack material. And they said, oh, we don't know what it is. Everything seems to be fine. Do you want to go home? And I said, no, we'll stay for the third blood test. So we had that third blood test. And when the results came in, just everyone came running. It's like, remember the old MASH show when they all ran to the helicopter? Yeah, that's what the emergency room was like. They just all came running. They were unplugging and unhooking, and then they wheeled him out and he was gone. And I was just standing there in this cubicle wondering, I didn't even know what's happened. So a nurse came up to me and said, your husband's had a massive coronary. They've taken him up to the coronary care ICU. And one thing I learned from that was I don't have any medical knowledge background, but my gut told me that regardless of the fact that he's 35, fit, healthy, no drugs, no alcohol, no family history, he was having a heart attack. So I had to go with my gut and stand up and say, no, we need to go with this. And the next day, I remember, so this happened on a Sunday, and then the next day was Monday, and Monday is a payday, and I didn't have any staff at that point. So I vividly remember walking across the car park hospital with a baby in my arm and talking to my franchisee on the Gold Coast, saying, Jason's had a heart attack, I'm at the hospital, today's payday, can you do the wages? And she'd never done anything in my business before. But because we had those systems in place, she had been trained in my processes. She could log into my computer. She could, you know, process the wages, and she could send the information that the clients needed. And of course, my clients were absolutely fine to wait if there were things that needed to wait while, you know, something like that happens. But at the end of the day, staff still need to be paid, and that can't wait. But it meant for me, I could just concentrate on being at the hospital and being with him and not have that added worry of having to do wages. So it was awesome.
What year was that he had this heart attack?
That was in 2010.
Wow.
Oh my goodness sakes. So those were 8 years of extreme intensity.
Yeah. Well, actually, we didn't know why the heart attack had happened. And the way my brain works is that if we don't know why, then it might happen again. So I made a very conscious decision back then that if it were to happen again, I didn't want my children's memories of Dad to be, you know, weekends full of mowing the lawns, doing the groceries and cleaning the house. I wanted them to reflect on amazing memories with Dad and as a family. So by the time Jaden was 2, we had purchased our first caravan, and we take a 3-day camping weekend once a month, and we do a couple of road trips throughout the year, and it's booked into my calendar. And my clients know that often I may not be there on a Friday, so wages don't happen on a Friday, you know, because my most important job as a mum, other than keeping children alive, of course, is creating memories.
Yeah.
Because you just never know what's around the corner. Like Jason had another medical incident this year, and it wasn't anything to do with his heart. He had a fairly straightforward hernia operation, and it was supposed to be in and out overnight, but he had massive complications, and we don't know why. He just likes to scare me, I think. But that was more terrifying than the heart attack, and it was actually more serious than the heart attack, the complications that he had.
Why is that for hernia?
I don't know. He had they nicked something in the surgery, which caused internal bleeding, which meant that his blood pressure just about bottomed out to single digits, and he had these gas bubbles on his chest, so they were worried about his lungs collapsing, and it was just terrible. He went into shock. It was a really bad time. And then the second night that I left him at the ICU, I came home, driving home, and I was planning his funeral in my head. That's how bad it was.
Oh, my goodness.
But by this time, I've got 3 employees who work for me, and they just took over, and they're amazing. And it comes back to those systems. I could do all of that, worry about my kids. My kids are 8 and 10 now, so they saw all of this happening. They weren't old enough to remember what happened when he had his heart attack, so I had to look after them as well. And it was BAS time, which in Australia, Sharon, is where we do quarterly lodgements with the tax office. So it was a really busy, stressful time. But the communication that I have with my clients and the systems, internal systems that we've got for keeping our clients up to date and the work flowing, my staff could just get in and do it, and it was awesome not to have to worry about that.
And of course, you've just described yet another scenario, as you say, where the systems are in place and where we have, we're hearing this regularly again, the boomers, the business boomers, who are in their older years, their more mature years, maybe losing their partners, maybe getting divorced, maybe losing to death, and they're caught with their pants down because those systems have not been thought about and processed and developed as you described. Sigrid, can you take us now through?
Yes, I will. I just. On that note, Sarah, thank you for sharing those, those personal details with us as well. Yeah. And it just again reminds me the parallel of that with the business. When you can actually focus on what's really important in life, which is family and life, and you don't have to worry about your business running or collapsing, because you have strong systems in place, and from the systems, having that structure of systems, your staff are aware of the steps and what needs to be done. It just makes such a huge difference. Now, I'm just running the parallel here to the business when I had an office supplies business here in Brisbane, and I made sure from the start that I was setting up systems. I did that because of my staff at the time that I had, and I wanted to make sure everybody was always up to date with what was happening. It just also allowed us to be an office supplies business independently owned who was doing their own deliveries, and we were doing deliveries within the same day, which no other franchises and larger businesses of that type were able to do, because their vehicles were just too big. We were able to do that because of systems I put in place. And what that also helped me do was I could focus on the marketing. I didn't have to worry about what staff was doing, what the deliveries were doing, what the orders were doing. It was all set up well. And when it came time to sell it, we actually were in a situation where we were considering to buy another business ourselves to expand that way. But then we got contacted by somebody who had that same idea and wanted to buy our business. Now, it only took a week for them to decide to buy because we had the systems in place. Like you were sharing, Sarah, your staff could jump in and do the work for you. We had the business set up so that these new owners could jump in and run it. It's such an important part. That is so under-recognized, and as Sharon just pointed out, especially by baby boomers, the ones that are sort of my age group, didn't start their businesses with that in mind. And most of them kind of sometimes think, we start this business and perhaps one day the children will take it over, which is definitely not always the case. Times change, directions and ideas change. So you really want to set up a business, number one, with having in mind that one day, whether there's an emergency or you plan for it, you want to sell it and someone else needs to take it over. How are they going to do that? Is it going to be quick and easy for them to get their head around it? Do they have to be of that industry, or can it be from any background and they can just jump in and take it on board? And with that in mind, and from the experience, the personal experience that both Sharon and I had, and I'm just going to touch on that a little bit. Sharon's had her business, a media agency and a magazine, and Sharon was able to sell that at a time when others were actually going broke, because media, you know, the magazines, the print media is just, as we know, has been completely replaced in the digital world. So it was a really great opportunity for her and the right time, which she timed, didn't you, Sharon? That was your focus, having everything in place, focusing on wanting to sell it before that market virtually collapsed, and getting money for such a business. And for me, it was that I started with a jewelry business in 2002. We had a retail manufacturing jewelry business, and my idea there was I went into that business with the mindset that one day I want to make money by selling it. So I put systems in place with that one already. And we sold that business at a time here in Australia where other jewelers were simply closing down because they couldn't find buyers for businesses that they had built around themselves. Not necessarily being the jeweler themselves, but just the whole way the business was run was, you know, set up in such a way that nobody could really jump in and take it on. So I made clear for us in those businesses, that early one and the next one, to have those systems there. And from that personal experience of having seen how powerful systems in place are, and a couple of other components as well, Sharon and I put our 7-step system in place. We're looking at scanning the market and industry research of the business when we work with a business owner to get them to get their business fit for sale. We are taking them through the steps there to be aware of what's happening in the market around them. We have them look, as I already mentioned earlier, very closely at who would the business buyer be? What would that person look like? Coming back to the whole area of personas. It is very important because as the business owner, you really can take a number of important steps as far as contacting potential buyers for your business. And then we're having a look at identifying what the best assets of the business are. And that is not always accountants like you to go to the accounting, to the facts and figures area, but your best assets might be intangible, and therefore you really need to look at what are they and how can I highlight them. The whole area of pre-sale preparation, looking at what the business has already got in place. A big component is an operations kit, which often businesses don't have, to have that documented, what needs to happen. Now, in retail, that was actually, I found that was quite easy because you need to really tell people when they come, your staff, when they come in, what are the first few things they need to do, especially in the jewelry business. Put the stock out, present it well, get the till ready, and so on and so forth. It was quite easy. In many other businesses, it's not as straightforward. So having that operations kit, business owners don't always look at that, and so we take our clients in our system through taking a look at that and setting something up, putting it in place. From my perspective, very strong too, and this is the experience I had with my businesses, is getting this marketing profile of the business established. It's like writing your story, creating that brand story in Word for your whole promotion material for getting that business out there. And to the business broker too, they often just focus on facts, figures in their bullets, but there's more to a business. There is a story around it, and you've just shared very generously your story, your business story with that. What a story. That component, even though that might not be the saleable component, it can be, by being highlighted, highlighting that, that can really bring another mum to wanting to buy your business, because that she can relate to that story. So story is so important. That is the marketing profile story. And then of course, you know, the last step, or the important step that we look at with the business owner in that particular system that we have in our program, is to create this exit strategy, that communication of the sale. How do you go about it? Who do you let to know first, second, third? Do you keep your employees in the dark? Do you share that with them? And so on. Many business owners really have no idea about it, no concept about how to go about that. So both Sharon and I, having come from our own background, having sold our businesses successfully and helped our clients guide them, that's how and why we created our system around getting your business fit for sale. And it is so refreshing to hear your story, and exciting how, you know, a story like yours can just really be relatable to anyone else in business wanting to set it up, getting ready for sale, having the systems in place and having such a compelling story behind it as to how and why you created that business and why you brought it back to another level to fit in with lifestyle. I think that's really important, and I really thank you for sharing that, Sarah.
That's all right. Something else that I wanted to touch on is when I worked in my job, when I first started there were 3 of us in the office, and one guy, David, so I was 17 at the time, and he, to me, seemed, you know, really old. But, you know, everyone past 30 when you're 17 is really old. But he had worked in the industry all around the world for many, many years, and he was a wealth of knowledge. And whenever I had a question, I would go and ask David, because he just knew everything. But to get that information out of him was like pulling teeth, and he was so frustrating to get that information. We used to have these little arguments in the office, and, you know, but he had so much knowledge. And I think if you put that into the business perspective, the business owner, you as the business owner have so much stuff in your head, and you know so much, and, you know, technical or industry type things change, but how to run your business and how you communicate with people and the different processes that you have day to day, that's really, really important to take it out of your head and put it on paper or put it into a system. You know, there's lots of ways that you can document your systems for a couple of reasons. First, if you bring on staff, it makes the training process so easy. It means you've got consistency across the board. Everyone knows what they need to do. But then when you come to sell it, even if you have staff or if you don't, it's like they can take a snapshot of all of the information that's in your brain and take that with them as part of, you know, their business IP, or, you know, the asset, because that's where it is. So if you're a one-man band and you're trying to sell your business, and you might have an amazing business, me as the person that might be purchasing it, if nothing was documented and you weren't like a separate entity for your business, I might be concerned that, you know, I'm going to buy this great business, but the clients are attached to you. So am I actually going to have a business when you're no longer there? So if your business can run without you, then I think that it's going to make it a lot easier to sell. And it's only going to be able to run without you when you've documented your systems. And there's lots of ways to document systems. I mean, think about all the ways that people learn. So Word, like, you know, typing out procedure documents, doing videos, doing audios, just screenshots of all of the processes in your system, in your business, and things that might seem really simple to you. So you said, Sigrid, you know, setting up the till. Well, what does that mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how to set up a till.
Yeah, that's right.
So the way I would say is write your system out and give it to a 15-year-old. Because if that 15-year-old needs to come into the shop and is going to open, they need to be able to follow the steps and think, okay, I can do this, and remove the jargon. Because somebody buying your business might not. So you could sell a bookkeeping business, but you don't have to sell it to a bookkeeper.
That's right. That's right.
So you might be selling it to somebody who's going to run the bookkeeping business and hire bookkeepers to do the bookkeeping. So you don't want to be putting all this bookkeeping jargon in because your buyer isn't going to get it.
That's such an important point. Thank you for touching on that, Sarah. That is really important. And I want to mention another component to that, which is, as the business owner, you do not need to be afraid of putting that into a manual or an operations kit, because you have it here. It's just a matter of bringing it out, and technology allows us to put that out there through, recording it. By just recording it, you don't have to sit there handwriting it. No. It's already here. It's just going to come out.
And the other thing with that is it's a massive job. If you've had your business for 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, there's lots of stuff to document if you've never documented these systems before. So there's a couple of things to consider. It's a massive job. You need to take your time and you need to map it out and, work through the process. You can't think, all right, today I'm going to document my business systems and it's going to be done by Tuesday, because it just won't be. So I would put it in your calendar as a task and just work through it step by step. The other thing that you can do to help you get it done is, if you've got staff in your business, they're already doing it. So they can help you with writing those systems. So if you've got staff that gets the till ready, they can write that procedure for you. So just share the load. And when you read their procedure document of how to get the till ready, you might identify gaps in your training process. So they are things that you need to, okay, well, hang on a minute. They haven't understood completely what our process is here. So yeah,
I love it.
Lots of ways to tackle it.
Yeah. Sharon, we're nearly coming to the end here.
Yes, and I want to touch on one thing. You've said so many important messages today, Sarah. Thank you, Sigrid. All of those identified moments, Sarah, those are gold. Those are golden points for anybody in business. I don't care if it's a small business or a large business, but when you talked about having the CEO, the founder, the owner with so much information in their head, we'd like to recommend that owner, if and when they sell their business or prepare to sell their business, if they want something to do after that business, they can write a book about that. About their industry, about their business, spend some time putting down the history of their industry and how their own business has fit in. Perhaps there's some wonderful stories that are attached to the ebb and flow of the maturity of their business. And that will be a treasured document, not only for the new people who will step in, but probably for the employees who have been with them for some years, and other industry players as well, and maybe even their family if there's a succession plan to consider in place, which isn't always the case, as we know. But that's something for that founder to spend their time on afterwards, or even before. But here we are. We're 2 minutes away from our pledge to keep this to a 60-minute event. And I want to thank you very much for all of the insights that you delivered and provided, and Sigrid reviewing our how we approach working with people who want to sell their business. We're not necessarily the people that a person who wants to sell their business would go to first. They would want to talk to you first. They would want to talk to a lawyer perhaps, or they might want to talk to a broker. We're saying to them, we want to help you stage your assets. Talk to your accountant, talk to your lawyer, sure. But they don't always have the expertise around how to stage the story of your sale. And we're not necessarily sure that they know how to position that story in the minds of a prospective buyer. That's where we're coming in, and we're proposing to get involved.
Thank you, Sharon. That's exactly it. And it's just been an absolutely gold mine this morning talking with you, Sarah. It's a great approach. It's a wonderful story, for your business, whether you're going to sell at one time in the future or not. There is so much there. There is huge value in the business itself. There's so much intangible asset there. It's been wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, also sharing your personal aspects of it. Really, really valuable. And we're going to put some, details around how to find out more about you with this video. So for today, thank you very much, Sarah, for sharing that. Now, we haven't mentioned your business name at all, so we're doing it right now. Miss Efficiency Bookkeeping is the name of your business, and it is missefficiency.com.au, correct, on your website URL, and we'll put that in writing with it. Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been blast talking to you ladies this morning, so thank you.
And the time's gone so quickly.
It has.
Thank you, Sharon, for your excellent questions, Sarah, for your answers, and for me, Sigrid, Kaste, Stickybeak Marketing. We'll see you again next time.
Thank you.